Bar on a Tuesday afternoon with a manila folder on the stool beside me and nothing in my glass but Coke. Ray Cutler watches me from behind the bar. He's been watching me for about 10 minutes without saying a word, which is unusual for Ray because Ray always has something to say. "You want anything in that Coke, Dale?" "Not yet." He nods and goes back to wiping down the bottles. The hydraulic door hisses shut behind a guy who just walked out. The bar is almost empty. A country station bleeds through the speaker above the register. Something about a woman leaving, which felt appropriate. I opened the folder. 11 photographs. Roy Mabry's handwriting on the cover sheet. Chattanooga, Hamilton House Hotel. 11 confirmed visits, 3 months. Karen's face in the first photograph. A man's hand on the small of her back. She's laughing at something he said. She looks genuinely happy, which was the part that took a minute to process. I look at the man's hand, I look at Karen's face. I close the folder. I put a 20 on the bar next to a $2 Coke, and I walk out. Ray doesn't say a word. I find out later he slid the 20 back into the tip jar and set a maker's mark on the bar for when I came back. Nobody else saw him do it. That's Ray. I drive the F-250 home on Route 11W with the folder on the passenger seat. At the intersection of Lynn Garden Drive, a pickup runs the red light and clips my rear quarter panel. Not bad, but enough to spin me sideways into the gravel shoulder. I sit there for 30 seconds with both hands on the wheel and the engine running. The other truck is gone before I can read the plate. The thing about almost getting hit by a truck is it clarifies your priorities. I had 11 photographs in a folder on the passenger seat and a marriage in the ditch. The truck was almost a relief. I pull back onto the road. Karen's Accord is in the driveway when I get home. Tucker meets me at the door, circles my legs twice, settles. He's a blue heeler, 7 years old, and he reads a room better than most people I know. He looked up at me once and then stayed close to my left leg, which was his way of saying he already understood something was wrong. Karen is in the kitchen on her phone. She's laughing at something. She doesn't look up when I walk in. I set the folder on the kitchen table. She turns around then. She looks at the folder. She looks at me. I watch her face do the math and come up with the right answer. And then I watch her decide to go on offense instead of defense. Because that's who Karen is. That's always been who Karen is. "What is that?" she said. "You know what it is." "Dale, I don't know what you think you have, but—" 11 visits, I said. 3 months. Hamilton House Hotel in Chattanooga. Cody Voss. You want me to keep going or you want to save us both some time? She went quiet for about 4 seconds. Then she straightened up and crossed her arms and looked at me, the way she used to look at listings that weren't worth her time. "You think you're irreplaceable?" she said. "I have someone handsome, successful, and ready." I heard it. I let it sit there for a second. "Perfect," I said. "I wish you well." She stared at me. I think she expected something else. Yelling, maybe. Crying. Something she could use. "You're a loser, Dale," she said. "You always have been." Okay, I picked up the folder. I walked to the bedroom. Tucker followed me. I pulled a bag out of the closet and started packing what I needed, which wasn't much. Karen stood in the doorway for a minute and said something else. I don't know what it was. I'd already filed it. I loaded Tucker into the F-250, drove to the warehouse on Eastman Road, sat in the parking lot at 11 at night with the engine off and the folder on the dash. I called Roy Mabry. "Roy, I got the folder." "I know, I'm sorry, Dale." "Don't be. How solid is it?" "Solid enough to frame and hang." "Good. I'll be in touch." I got out of the truck. There was a concrete block at the edge of the landscaping border, one of those decorative ones Bud had put out when we repaved the lot 2 years ago. I picked it up and dropped it on the hood of a broken equipment cart that was sitting near the loading dock. Not hard. Just enough to make a dent. I stood there, looking at the dent. I wasn't angry at Karen. I wasn't even angry at Cody Voss, whoever he was. I was angry at myself for 11 photographs worth of not seeing it. That's the part that sticks. Not the betrayal. The blindness. I went back inside. Tucker was asleep on the passenger seat. I sat in that warehouse for about an hour with the lights off and the folder on the desk, and I thought about what she said. Not all of it. Just the word she chose. Loser. She meant it as an exit line. I filed it as a starting point. 13 months. That's what it took. The next morning, I was at the warehouse by 6. Bud Hale pulled in at 6:15. He's been my foreman for 11 years. He walked in, saw the bag in the corner by my desk, and didn't ask a single question. He just handed me a gas station coffee and sat down across from me. "Equipment inventory?" he said. "Let's do it." We went through 3 county venues, the cash ledger, fighter contracts for the November card. Bud has a way of working that I've always appreciated. He does the job in front of him and trusts you to handle the job you're not talking about. He watched me run through the numbers that morning, and I could tell he knew something was different, but he kept his mouth shut and kept working, which is exactly what I needed. "You need me to move the Harlan card to the 3rd Saturday?" he said. "No, keep it. I need the room." "All right." That afternoon, I drove to Gloria Hensley's office on Broad Street. Gloria does family law. She's been doing it for 20 years, and she charges $240 an hour, and she is worth every cent of it. She has an office that smells like coffee and legal pads, and she never wastes a word. I sat down across from her and explained the asset situation. She listened without writing anything down, which I've always found impressive. "You want to move the liquid assets before she retains anyone," she said. "Before she retains anyone." "Into a family trust. Frank's been on the paperwork for 2 years. I just never activated it." She looked at me for a moment. "That's the cleanest thing I've seen in 20 years of family law. I learned it from watching other people make mistakes." She almost smiled. "I'll draw up the activation documents by Thursday. Do not discuss this with Karen or anyone connected to Karen." "Understood." I drove from Gloria's office to Roy Mabry's place on Commerce Street to pick up the original photographs. Roy keeps his office above a tax preparation service, and it smells like old carpet and file boxes and the particular brand of patience that comes from 31 years of watching people do things they shouldn't. He handed me the envelope without ceremony. "Anything else you need from me?" he said. "Not yet, but stay available." On the way back to the truck, I noticed a silver Camry behind me. It had been behind me since Roy's block. 3 turns, same car. I didn't speed up. I drove to the Sullivan County Courthouse parking lot, pulled in, parked, and waited. The Camry parked 2 rows over. A man got out. I didn't recognize him. I got out of the truck and walked over and stood in front of him. "You following me for Karen or for Cody?" He blinked. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Okay, have a good afternoon." He got back in the Camry and left. I couldn't prove it was deliberate, but I filed it under "they're already nervous," which told me more than I needed to know about where things stood. I drove out to Clinch Mountain Road that evening. Frank's porch looks east over the ridge, and the air up there smells like wood smoke and whatever Norma's got on the stove. Norma brought coffee without being asked, set it down in front of me, and went back inside, which is her way of saying she understood this was a conversation she didn't need to be part of. Frank sat across from me in the other rocker and listened to the whole thing without interrupting. For Frank, that's a significant act of restraint. He's 59 years old and has run a plumbing business for 24 years, and he has an opinion about everything, and he usually shares it before you're done talking. He sat there and listened. When I finished, he said, "So, you want me to administer the trust? You've been on the paperwork since 2022. "I know I've been on the paperwork. I just want to hear you say it." "Frank, I need you to administer the trust." "There it is." He paused. "Norma, get the man some biscuits." He pulled out a legal pad and started listing my assets in his own handwriting in the wrong order. With a pencil he kept sharpening with a pocket knife. The list looked like something a man would make on the back of a grocery receipt, which was exactly why I trusted it. "Her real estate license," he said, writing, "is worth less than the paper it's printed on in a divorce proceeding. You know that?" "I know that." "I'm just saying. She's been telling people she's some kind of real estate power player for 6 years. You know what her commission totals were last year?" "I have a general idea." "Less than my worst plumber." He looked up. "I'm not even being mean, that's just the number." I laughed. Actually laughed out loud, for the first time in 3 days. Frank looked pleased with himself in the way he always does when he lands something true. "Norma," he called again. "I heard you the first time," she called back. We ate biscuits and sawmill gravy on the porch, and Frank finished the list, and I drove back down the mountain feeling, not better exactly, but steadier. Like I'd found the ground under my feet again. Ray called me the next afternoon. "You need to come in. Patty Doyle's here." Patty Doyle owns an alterations shop on Main Street. She and Karen were close for about 4 years, until Karen did something that Patty has never fully explained to me, and probably won't. What I know is that Patty has been operating on a low-grade burn of resentment ever since. And when Ray said her name, I understood immediately why she was there. I came in. Patty had a phone on the table in front of her and a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking, and the look of a woman who had made a decision and was committed to it. "I'm not doing this for you," she said before I even sat down. "I want that on record." Noted. She told me about Cody in June. She laughed about you not knowing. I have a voice memo. I'd like a copy. I figured, "You want a drink?" "Not yet." She slid the phone across the table. I listened to about 45 seconds of it. Karen's voice clear as a radio station, laughing about how Dale had no idea, how Cody was everything Dale wasn't, how she'd been planning this for longer than she'd told anyone. I handed the phone back. "Send me the file," I said. "Already did. Check your email." Walt Greer met me in the Anchor parking lot that same evening. He was in uniform, technically off a shift, technically not there. He doesn't come inside when he's in uniform. He stood by his cruiser with his arms crossed and talked quietly. "Cody Voss has 2 fraud complaints in Davidson County. Nothing prosecuted. Documented? Documented. If I collect anything on this end, I want it handled properly. That's why I'm telling you." He got back in the cruiser and drove away. Walt has been a deputy for 22 years, and he has a rigid sense of proper channels that I've learned to work with rather than around. He wasn't offering help. He was offering information. The difference matters to him, and I respect that. I called Pete Stamos that night. Pete is a reporter for the Harlan County Courier, and he's been one for 14 years. And he has the energy of a man who has consumed too much coffee and not enough sleep for so long that it's become his natural state. He picked up on the second ring. "Pete, I've got something coming." "How big?" "Big enough for a byline. I'll keep the lights on. Give me 6 weeks. I've got a story on a zoning commissioner I can run in the meantime. Take your time." That night, I went back to the house to get Tucker and some tools from the garage. Karen's car was gone. She was staying somewhere. I didn't ask, and I didn't need to know. I went to the garage. On Karen's workbench, there was a sticky note with Cody Voss's name on it, a phone number, a hotel name, and a date, 3 weeks out. I stood there for about 30 seconds looking at it. Then I took a photograph of it with my phone and put it back exactly where it was. On the way out, I knocked Karen's ceramic pot of office supplies off the workbench. Pens and paper clips, and a staple remover scattered across the concrete floor. I looked at the mess, picked up Tucker's leash, left. I'm not proud of the pot, but I'm not ashamed of it either. I drove to Frank's house with Tucker in the passenger seat and a folder full of photographs and a voice memo of my wife laughing about me, and I thought, 6 weeks? 6 weeks is nothing. I've run fight cards on less time and worse odds. The difference is, I always knew who was in the other corner. Now I did. The Saturday after that, I drove to Chattanooga. Cody Voss had a show at the Riverbend Pavilion, which is a mid-sized outdoor venue on the river that holds maybe 200 people on a good night. I parked in the back lot, paid cash for a Bud Light I didn't want, and stood near the rear of the crowd. I watch fighters for a living, not the punches, the tells. The moment a man's performance slips and the real person shows through. I watched Cody Voss the same way. He's handsome in a catalog way. Tall, good jaw, hair that looks like someone spent time on it. He works the crowd with the practiced ease of a man who has been doing this long enough that it doesn't cost him anything. He tells a joke between songs. The crowd laughs, he smiles like he expected it, and then, about 40 minutes in, a song doesn't land the way he wanted. You could see it. A slight flatness in the response, polite applause instead of real applause. And for about 3 seconds, Cody Voss looked at the crowd with something behind his eyes that wasn't confidence. It was calculation. He was figuring out what adjustment to make, not feeling it, managing it. That's the tell. A woman came up beside me, early 40s, wiry, dark hair, a spiral notebook tucked under her arm that she wasn't using. "You're not from around here," she said. "Kingsport. Long drive for Cody Voss." "I'm not here for the music." She looked at me sideways. Diane Foss, I'm his publicist. Dale Pruitt. I run boxing events in East Tennessee. She was quiet for a moment. You here because of the Davidson County thing? I looked at her. What do you know about the Davidson County thing? More than I want to. She paused. Buy me a drink after the set? Sure. We stood there for the rest of the show not talking. Cody finished with a song that got a genuine response from the crowd, and he milked it well. He knows how to end strong, I'll give him that. After the show, Diane and I sat at a picnic table near the beer tent. She had a vodka soda. I had another Bud Light I wasn't going to drink. How long have you been covering for him? I said. She didn't even flinch. About 8 months. There are 2 investors from Nashville who gave him money for a tour that never happened. The money went somewhere else. I've been managing the narrative. Why are you telling me this? Because you're not the first husband. And because I'm tired. She looked at her drink. He's been seeing a woman from Kingsport. Real estate. I don't know her name. I do, she nodded. I figured. What's your interest in this? I want out clean. If this thing blows up, and it's going to blow up, I want my name attached to disclosure, not cover-up. I thought about that for a moment. I might be able to help with that, I said. I thought you might. I drove back to Kingsport with the window down and the night air coming in off the mountains, and I thought about the difference between a man performing confidence and a man who actually has it. Cody Voss had the first one down cold, the second one I was working on. The next week, Karen came to the warehouse. I didn't know she was coming. She pulled up in the Accord and walked through the side door and stood in the middle of the floor with her arms crossed, which is her power stance, the one she uses in negotiations. Bud was in the back. He stayed there. We need to talk about the house, Karen said. Gloria Hensley handles that now. You can call her office. Dale, I'm not going through lawyers for every little... Karen, everything goes through Gloria. That's how this works. She looked around the warehouse. At the equipment, the stacked chairs, the county map on the wall with the pins in it. She'd never been in here before. Not once in 18 years. This is your whole world, isn't it? She said. It wasn't really a question. It pays the mortgage you're trying to negotiate. I'm not trying to... She stopped. Reset. I want to do this reasonably. Then call Gloria. She looked at me for a long moment. You're not even angry. No. That's not normal, Dale. Call Gloria, Karen. She left. Bud came out of the back about 30 seconds later. Equipment inventory? He said, let's do it. That evening, I drove to the Anchor. Ray set a maker's mark in front of me without being asked. I finally let him. She come by? Ray said she had a warehouse. How'd that go? She left. Ray nodded. He polished a glass. You know what I've noticed in 19 years behind this bar? What's that? Women who leave for somebody flashier always come back around when the flash wears off. She won't be coming back around. No, he said. I don't think she will either. Just an observation. I drank the maker's mark. It tasted like the right decision. Patty Doyle came in about an hour later. She sat down 2 stools over and ordered a white wine and looked at me. Linda Marsh called me today, she said. Linda Marsh is Karen's best friend. She works at First Baptist, and she has been covering Karen's whereabouts for months. I knew this already from Roy's notes. What did she want? I said. She wanted to know what I'd told you. She was nervous. Patty sipped her wine. I told her I hadn't told you anything. Why? Because I want to see how this plays out before Linda knows what I've done. She'll tell Karen, and I want Karen comfortable for a little while longer. I looked at her. You're better at this than I expected. Dale, I've been running an alteration shop for 12 years. I know how to let out a seam without the customer noticing until they're already home. I almost asked her what that meant as a metaphor. Then I decided I understood it well enough. Walt Greer called me that night. He had something new. Cody Voss filed for an LLC in Hamilton County 6 weeks ago. Voss Music LLC. But the registered agent is a Nashville address that doesn't exist. Meaning? Meaning someone might want to look at where the investor money went. Someone like a reporter? I wouldn't know anything about that, Walt said. I'm just telling you what the public record says. Appreciated. I called Pete Stamos. Pete, the LLC is in Hamilton County. Registered agent is a ghost address in Nashville. Send me the filing number. Sending now. Dale. He paused. How long have you been sitting on this? Long enough. Okay, I'll start pulling threads. And this is going to take a few weeks. I know, take your time. I drove back to Frank's house. Tucker was on the porch waiting. Frank was inside watching the news. Norma had left a plate of food on the counter with a paper towel over it and a note that said, "Microwave 2 minutes." I microwaved it 2 minutes. Frank came in while I was eating. "Gloria call you," he said, "this afternoon. Trust is activated? As of Thursday." He poured himself a coffee and sat down. "You know what Karen's going to say when she finds out." "I know." "You ready for that conversation?" "No, but I'm ready for what comes after it." Frank nodded. He drank his coffee. "You know what the funny thing is?" "What?" "She called Norma last week. Karen did. Trying to get Norma to talk to you, soften you up." I set my fork down. "What did Norma say?" Frank smiled. "She said she'd pass it along." He paused. "She didn't pass it along." I picked my fork back up. "I love Norma." "Yeah, well, get in line." The confrontation I'd been waiting for came on a Thursday evening in November. Karen had retained a lawyer by then, a man named Dixon from Bristol, who had a reputation for aggressive discovery. Gloria had told me to expect it. I expected it. What I didn't expect was Karen showing up at Frank's house. I heard the Accord in the driveway, and I went to the door. Frank came out of the kitchen. I told him with a look to stay inside. He went back in, but I could hear him about 4 feet from the door. Karen stood on the porch. She was dressed well, hair done, the version of herself she presents when she needs something. She looked at me and then at the house and then back at me. "You're living at Frank's," she said, "for now." "Dale, this is—" She stopped, started again. "Dixon says you've moved assets into a family trust. Gloria handles asset questions." "Stop saying that. Stop sending me to lawyers. I'm your wife. You were my wife. Now, you're the other party. Gloria handles the other party." Her jaw tightened. "You think this is clever? Moving money around before the filing? The trust was established 2 years ago. Ask Gloria for the documentation." "I know when it was established. I'm asking why you activated it now." "Because now seemed like the right time." She stepped forward. "Dale, I have a lawyer who's going to go through every account, every asset, every piece of equipment in that warehouse. Let him. You're not hearing me." "I hear you fine. I want the house," she said. "I want my share of the business equity. And I want the house, and I want this done without a fight. You should have thought about that before Chattanooga." That landed. I watched it land. She went quiet for a moment. "That was—" she started. "Cody and I are—" "I don't care what you and Cody are. I genuinely don't. You made your choices. I'm making mine. Call Gloria." "You know what your problem is," she said. "You've always been satisfied with small. Small business, small house, small life. Cody has 2 fraud complaints in Davidson County. And an LLC with a ghost registered agent in Nashville," I said. "I'd look into that before you hitch your wagon." She stared at me. "Where did you—" "Call Gloria, Karen." She stood there for another moment. Then she turned and walked back to the Accord. She got in. She sat there for about 30 seconds before she started the engine. Then she drove away. I went inside. Frank was standing in the kitchen doorway with his coffee. "Ghost registered agent," he said. "Yep. You've been doing your homework. 11 years of running fight cards. You learn to know who you're promoting before you put their name on a poster." He nodded. "Norma made pie." "What kind?" "Apple." "Good." We ate apple pie and didn't talk about Karen anymore that night. The next piece came from Diane Foss. She called me on a Wednesday morning, 3 weeks after Chattanooga. She was in her car. I could hear the road noise. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Go ahead." "Cody knows you were at the Riverbend show. He had someone in the parking lot. He knows your name." "Okay. He's not happy about it." "I imagine not." "He called Karen. Told her you were following him. She's going to try to use it." "Let her try." "I was at a public event. Paid cash for a beer. Stood in the back of the crowd." "I know. I'm just telling you." "Diane, what else?" A pause. The Nashville investors are starting to ask questions. One of them has a lawyer. It's going to move faster than Cody thinks. How much faster? Weeks, not months. All right, have you talked to Pete Stamos, the reporter? Not yet. When you're ready to go on record, call Pete. I'll send you his number. Okay. Another pause. Dale, why are you helping me? I'm not helping you. I'm helping the story. You happen to be part of it. She laughed. It was a tired laugh, but it was real. Fair enough. I sent her Pete's number. Pete called me an hour later. She reached out, he said. Good. Dale, this is bigger than I thought. I know. I've got the Ghost LLC, the Davidson County complaints, and now a source with direct knowledge of the investor situation. This isn't a local interest piece. How big are we talking? Regional, maybe state. Depends on how the Nashville angle develops. I thought about that for a moment. Pete, I need you to hold it until I tell you. I know, you'll tell me when. When I'm ready. All right. I'll keep pulling. Linda Marsh was the next problem. Roy had been watching Karen's movements for me since the beginning, and he noted that Karen was spending a lot of time at Linda and Jean Marsh's house on Watauga Avenue. Linda was providing cover. Roy had documented at least 6 instances of Karen using Linda's address as an alibi. I thought about that for a while. Then I thought about Jean Marsh. Jean works for Tennessee Valley Authority. He's a line supervisor. He's been married to Linda for 26 years. He coaches youth baseball in the spring. He has no idea what Linda has been doing for Karen. I'm not a cruel man. I thought hard about whether to use this. I thought about it for 2 days. Then I thought about Patty Doyle's voice memo and Karen laughing about me not knowing. And I thought about 11 photographs in a folder on a kitchen table and a word she chose on her way out. I called Walt Greer. Walt, I need a favor. Not official. Depends on the favor. Jean Marsh, TVA supervisor. His wife Linda has been providing false alibis for Karen Pruitt. I need Jean to know. A long pause. Dale. I'm not asking you to do anything improper. Jean and I go back. I just need someone to be with me when I tell him, so it doesn't look like I'm running a game. You want a witness? I want a witness. Another pause. When? Saturday morning. I'll be off shift by 8. Jean Marsh opened his door on Saturday morning in a TVA jacket and a look of mild confusion. Walt stood behind me and to the left, in civilian clothes, hands in his jacket pockets. Dale, Jean said, what's going on? Can we come in? We sat at Jean's kitchen table. Linda wasn't home. Jean listened to what I told him with the focused attention of a man who processes technical information for a living. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he sat there for a moment. How long? He said. At least 6 months. He nodded slowly. He looked at the table. He looked at Walt. This is accurate, he said to Walt. To the best of my knowledge, Walt said. Jean nodded again. He stood up. He walked to the counter and poured himself a cup of coffee, and stood there with his back to us. I appreciate you telling me, he said. I'd like you to go now. We went. Walt and I sat in the F-250 in front of Jean's house for a moment. You feel good about that? Walt said. No. But you did it anyway. Jean deserved to know. Walt nodded. Yeah, he did. I drove to the warehouse. Bud had the November card laid out on the table, and we spent the rest of the morning going through it. Fighter contracts, venue logistics, the sound system rental, the catering for the post-fight dinner. You want the projector set up for the dinner? Bud said. Yeah, set it up. Same as last year? I thought about it. A little different this year. Bud looked at me. How different? I'll let you know. He nodded and wrote it down. He didn't ask what I meant. That's Bud. The November card ran on a Friday night at the Anchor Lounge back room. 60 chairs, round tables, a projector screen I'd installed myself 3 years ago for fight footage. We ran 4 bouts. The crowd was loud and happy, and the catering was biscuits and boiled peanuts and a cash bar that Ray ran from a folding table in the corner. The card went well. It always goes well when Bud runs the logistics. But the card wasn't the main event. The main event was the fighter appreciation dinner afterward. I'd been planning it for 3 weeks. 60 people in that room. Fighters, their families, local sponsors. A few county officials, Pastor Dwayne Holt from First Baptist, who'd been blessing the pre-fight meal for 4 years, and Pete Stamos, who was there with his spiral notebook and a press pass I'd arranged through the venue. I'd also made sure that Karen knew about the dinner. I'd had Bud mention it to someone who would mention it to someone who would mention it to Linda Marsh. Karen had been to 2 of these dinners before. She knew what they were. She came. I saw her walk in at about 8:30 with Linda Marsh behind her. She was dressed up. She scanned the room and found me near the projector, and her expression did something complicated when she saw me standing there in a jacket I didn't usually wear, talking to Pete Stamos, who she didn't recognize. Cody Voss was not with her. I'd expected that. What I hadn't expected was Diane Foss, who came in about 5 minutes later and sat down at a table near the back. She and I had agreed she'd be there. We hadn't agreed on the timing. I gave Bud the signal at 8:45. The projector came on. I'd built the presentation myself over 3 weeks, in the evenings at Frank's house, while Tucker slept on the floor beside me. It started with the fight card highlights, which got applause. Then it moved into the appreciation portion, where I acknowledged the fighters, the sponsors, the county support. Then it moved into something else. The Davidson County fraud complaints. Public record. Pete had pulled them and formatted them cleanly. Cody Voss's name, the complaint numbers, the dates, the LLC filing. Hamilton County. The ghost registered address in Nashville. Public record. A summary of the investor dispute, sourced to Diane Foss, who had agreed to go on record. Her name was on the slide. And then one more slide. 11 photographs. Not explicit, not cruel. Just Karen and Cody Voss at the Hamilton House Hotel in Chattanooga. Her hand on his arm, his hand on the small of her back. Her face turned toward him, laughing. 60 people in that room. I heard the room go quiet. I looked at Karen. She had gone completely still. She was standing near the back wall with a glass in her hand, and she was looking at the screen, and her face had the expression of a person watching something happen that they cannot stop and cannot reverse. Linda Marsh put a hand on Karen's arm. Karen didn't move. Pastor Holt, to his credit, looked at the screen and then looked at me with the steady expression of a man who has seen marriages fail and knows what a man's face looks like when he's already past grief. He didn't say anything. He just folded his hands on the table. Pete Stamos was writing in his spiral notebook. I walked to the front of the room. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, I said. The fight card was excellent. Bud Hale ran a flawless operation, as he always does. I'm proud of what we've built here. I paused. Some of you may be wondering about the last few slides. The Davidson County complaints and the LLC information are public record. The investor fraud summary has been verified by a source who will go on record. The photographs were obtained legally through a licensed private investigator. I looked at Karen. I'm not doing this to be cruel, I said. I'm doing this because I've spent 18 years building something real in this town. And I want the people in this room to know who I am and what I stand for. And I want them to know what I found out. The room was very quiet. The Harlan County Courier will be running a full story on Cody Voss and the investor fraud next week. I'd encourage anyone who has done business with Voss Music LLC to read it carefully. I looked at Diane Foss. She nodded once. That's all I have, and I said, enjoy the rest of your evening. I stepped back from the projector. Karen set her glass down on the nearest table. Her hand was shaking. She looked at me across the room with an expression I hadn't seen on her face before. It wasn't anger. It wasn't the controlled, strategic look she uses in negotiations. It was something smaller and more honest than that. She looked at Linda. Linda looked at the floor. Karen walked toward the door. She stopped about halfway across the room and turned back to me. Dale, call Gloria, I said. She stood there for a moment. 60 people in that room, and it was completely silent. Then she walked out. The hydraulic door hissed shut behind her. Ray Cutler, from behind the folding bar table in the corner, poured a maker's mark and set it on the table nearest to me without a word. I picked it up. Pete Stamos came over. He had his notebook open. That was the cleanest thing I've ever seen at a boxing dinner, he said. Write it up, I said. Already am. Diane Foss came over next. She looked tired and relieved in equal measure, the way people look when they've been carrying something for a long time and finally put it down. "You good?" I said. "Yeah," she said. "Yeah, I think I am." Frank came in from the back, where he'd been standing for the last 20 minutes. I hadn't told him about the presentation. He'd figured it out on his own, which is Frank. He stood next to me and looked at the door Karen had walked out of. 13 months, I said. What? From the folder to tonight. 13 months. He nodded. He picked up a boiled peanut from the paper cup on the nearest table and ate it. "You know what she said to me," I said, "the night I found out." "What did she say?" "That I was a loser. That I always had been." Frank looked at the room. 60 people, most of them still sitting there, some of them talking quietly, some of them looking at me with the kind of respect that comes from watching a man do something difficult cleanly. "Yeah," Frank said. "Well," he picked up another peanut. "Looks like she was wrong about that."